Good morning.
Morning, Michael. How are you?
Okay, I think some people are out maybe out this week because of the holiday weekend, but we're going to go forward anyway. Let me just pause this for a second. Okay. All right. So, let me pull up the screen. Let's make sure this works. All right. Let's see. All right, so I've got a new machine. I think this should be working, right? Can you see? Yeah, you can see the text. Okay. All right.
Yes.
So let's see. I got to put on my glasses. So last week we ended, I think it was right before the end of 13. And again, we're going through commentary by not verse by verse, but a lot of the verses in the text. And Haman, in this one, this is the verse where he promises the king to pay him silver if he'll give him control and wipe out this people. So according to that, Reish Lakish says it's revealed and known in advance to the one who spoke and the world came into being, that in the future, Haman was going to weigh out shekels against the Jewish people. Therefore, God arranged that the Jewish people's shekels that were given to the temple preceded Haman's shekels. So I guess the idea here is that, right, they're living in Persia. And this is true that for quite some time, while the temple was in existence, Jews would send their taxes, their, I guess it's a tax, but it's a donation to the temple in Jerusalem. Even though the diaspora was expanding, they still sent monies to the temple. And for many of the empires, at this time, for all Jews are living in different empires. There are Jews living in the East, there's Jews living in the West, Western diaspora. They speak different languages. But the Romans and the Persians were really irritated that they're losing out money on these Jews who keep sending their taxes to Jerusalem. So this was an issue in that time. And but in this case, Haman was gonna.
Would the Romans have been in the picture at this time?
Well, at the
this is
but remember, this is
400 or so BCE, isn't it?
No. Let's see. This would be 300. So wait. So who's in the Eastern? So it would have been the still the Hellenistic emperors. So it would have been the Ptolemies. It would have been the Seleucids. But remember, Reish Lakish is living in the. Let's see. Reish Lakish is the third century of the Common Era. So it's a world in which.
The Romans were around then. No, of just the time of this story.
Right. In that time it would have been it wouldn't have been the Romans. But the idea is that during this period of time, wherever Jewish diaspora was, they were sending money to the temple. And it was a point of contention with these emperors that the Jews were losing out some dollars or shekels because the Jews are sending it to their temple and not to them. So I guess because I think in this case what the Reish Lakish is suggesting, that God was so smart that at the beginning of Adar, right? Let's find the. It wasn't the half shekel. Oh, here it is. The shekels are needed for the communal offerings of the upcoming year. Okay, that we know. The sages decree that the collection begins from the beginning of Adar. It's this is Parshat Shkalim. We read the special Haftarah at the beginning of Adar, and in this this merit they were saved from Haman's decree that was to be established with shekels. So if at the beginning of Adar they're sending their shekels in, their half shekels, then there's nothing here. We don't have anything for you to take because we've sent our shekels in. I think that's the idea behind this. Because otherwise, I don't know if most tyrants would use that excuse, right? I mean, if they want their shekels, there's like, I don't care what you sent to the temple, you still owe me. But according to Reish Lakish, this was a kindness to that the beginning of the month of Adar is when Jewish people throughout the world sent their shekels into the temple. Okay, and here's the lesson from Shkalim, from the Mishnah in Shkalim. Be'echad ba'adar mashmi'in al hashkalim ve'al hakilaim. At the beginning of Adar, this is when they make a public announcement about that contribution. And then Achashverosh's response is, Vayomer HaMelech la'aman hakesev nitun lach ve'ha'am la'asot bo ketov be'einecha. The money is given, this silver is given to you, and the people also to do with what seems good to you. In which case, Rabbi Abba says, Mashal the Achashverosh ve'Haman. It's an analogy, a parable, as he translates it here. As to what can it be compared? Well, it's two individuals who both have needs. One is has a big mound of dirt in the middle of his field. The other one has a ditch, a pit in his field, and he doesn't know what to do, how to fill it up. And so one says to the other, "Hey, if you'll give me, I'll pay you for your dirt, so I can fill my hole." And the guy says, "Oh man, just take the dirt." Oh, here it is, done here. And later, one day they happened to meet each other. The owner of the ditch said to the owner of the mound, "Sell me your mound." And he said, "Hey, take it for free. It's great. I just got to get rid of it." Meaning that, again, the rabbis have a real desire to make Achashverosh equal to Haman as a bad guy. It's just Haman was more efficient. He was more active. But they really want Achashverosh to be seen as equally bad. So he also wanted to kill the Jews. He just didn't know how to do it. And then Haman comes up with this plan. He's like, great, that's a fantastic idea.
Is there any indication in the text of Esther that Ahasuerus knew that Haman was talking about the Jews? Because I can't think of any.
Because he says, right, because there's this Am Echad. He doesn't describe the.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I think, it could be.
There's this people with strange customs and they don't do things that we do. But
I wonder if that's a motivation for the rabbis to making Achashverosh out to be this bad guy, because if you could read it, that he didn't know what they were doing. He didn't know that they was going to kill Jews. And they want to say, no, he knew exactly what he was doing.
Right.
Yeah, that could be that. Maybe that's a motivation for him. That because we also saw in some of the other commentaries so far that right before this last week, we were looking at how he's Haman was suggesting that it's all the Jews are guilty, even their righteous ones are guilty because they're not doing their job of observing Torah, and even if they're observing Torah, then it's they're not doing a good job of getting other people, their followers, their lay people to observe Torah.
That's sort of interesting too, because one of the complaints about them is they observe different customs.
Right. Yeah. So, no, I guess that you're right. If you read the text as it is, I'm just looking at it right now. There isn't anywhere where he specifically mentions.
Yeah.
You could make the argument if you wanted to argue on behalf of Achashverosh, you could say he had no clue who Haman was going after. Now,
yeah, he doesn't mention Mordecai.
Right. So I guess the question then would be, which of course lends itself to the trope that Achashverosh is an idiot and is manipulated easily. If you wanted to defend Achashverosh, you could say that. And I guess, now that I think about it, you'd have to believe that, because otherwise, when Esther finally reveals her people, that was the whole point. She didn't tell who her people were, so that when
Right.
she tells her who she is, he's like, "What? This is terrible." But if he was behind it all the time, and then she told him that he was Jewish, wouldn't he just get rid of her? I
Well,
mean, I suppose she could have won his favor over or something, but
yeah,
yeah, that's a good point. There's like I don't know if you ever saw the movie with what's his Sacha Baron Cohen, The Dictator. The last scene in the movie, he plays this this nondescript Arab dictator who comes to America, loses his crown, and meets this young woman, and she helps restore him to his title, and they get married. And in the last scene of the movie, she asks him something about they're getting married, and she says, I don't know if she wants a rabbi or if she wants him to wear a kippah or something like that. He's like, what are you talking about? And she goes, oh, I'm Jewish. And then he turns around to his advisor and he makes the sign like, we're getting rid of her, because he's always making self-fun of anti-Semites. But so that's what you would think would happen here when he tells them. But okay, so that's a good point. That's a good recognition that the rabbis clearly they want to make him out to be a bad guy, and from the text itself, you could defend him. All right, so here we get to Vayasar HaMelech et Tabato. He removed the ring from his finger, gives the ring of sovereignty over to Haman. So so here I think Abba Bar Kahana's statement is very telling. Gidolah hasarat taba'ad yoter me-arba'im u'shmone nevi'im v'sheva nevi'ot shenitnabu lahen Yisrael shekulan lo hechzirum lemutav ve'ilu hasarat taba'ad hechziratan lemutav. That more effective was the anti-Semitism, the threat of death by Haman, than all the words of the prophets and the prophetesses on behalf of the Jewish people, right? They told people, you're doing wrong, God's angry with you, go back to the straight path. Didn't really work. Haman says, we're going to kill all the Jews. All of a sudden, the Jews are starting to pray. And I think that's just a very interesting psychological insight to how people behave. This now leads us to a new path where we start talking about these prophets. There's 48 prophets and 7 prophetesses. Let's see what he says here. Oh, the notes just tells us about the different, they try to number the different prophets. Rashi goes through the list. Okay, so beyond, which means beyond the 15 prophetic books that we have, named prophets, and the several others who we know through the who are obvious, Elisha, Elijah, Moses. There were other prophets as well, and we also have prophetesses, and we're going to go through that list now. So my derush. So what led them to determine? Wait, maybe I missed something here. I guess we should read this. Okay. They neither subtracted nor added. Oh, okay. These prophets and the prophetesses did not add or subtract to what is written in the Torah. That is a very important anti-Christological statement. Let's see if he mentions this. No, he doesn't mention this. But it is the idea here is that why can't Jesus be one of the prophets? Well, because you can't add or subtract. Every one of the prophets simply taught what Moses taught. No difference. They were simply supporting. The only change, the only exception was the reading of the Megillah, right? Because that comes after the Torah. So how did they determine that this was acceptable, that they could add the book of Esther? On what basis did they add this mitzvah? So Amar Rabbi Yehoshua bar Korcha, this or Rabbi Chia bar Avin said in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korcha, just as me avdut lecherut amrin and shira, just as at Pesach time when we go from slavery to freedom, it was appropriate to sing a song. We read the song yesterday in Shul. Mimitat lechayim lo kol shekain. If you're going from potential death to life, shouldn't we also sing a song or read something praiseworthy? Ihachi halel nami nema lefisha ein omrim halel al ne. Okay, in that case, we should also say, well, how come we don't say Hallel? We don't recite Hallel on Purim. But if you're drawing a parallel between Purim and Pesach and the miracles in these cases, why don't we sing Hallel? And the answer is that Hallel is not recited on a miracle that occurred outside Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so that's problematic right there, because the exodus from Egypt was not in the land of Israel. So wait, what are you talking about? Okay, so wait a minute. We've got an explanation from a Baraita. Ad shelo nichnesu Yisrael le'aretz, before they entered into the land, before they took control of the land and sovereignty over the land, then actually it was permissible to sing songs of praise to any kind of miracle that occurred outside the land. But after they settled the land of Israel, lo huksharu kol artzot lomar shema. Only Israel was acceptable for miracles in Israel. Is it appropriate for us to sing songs of praise or sing Hallel? Otherwise, it's not appropriate. Okay, so that's one explanation of that, one apologetics for that first answer. Rav Nachman Amar, Kriyata zo Halelah. The reading of Megillah is itself, it's like reciting Hallel. You don't need to recite Hallel if you're reading the Megillah. Rava offers the answer that's most commonly given. Bishlama hatam halalu avdei Adonai. See, in the case when we sing Hallel, we recite the verse in Psalms. It's at the very opening of verse Psalm 113, first Psalm in Hallel. Halalu avdei Adonai, the servants of God, because that was the whole point, is we moved from being servants to a human tyrant to being, or slaves to a human tyrant, to being servants of the true God. So that's why we're singing Hallel on Pesach. But in this case with Purim, even after Haman was defeated, the Jews were still Avdei Achashverosh. They were still under the thumb of Achashverosh, as the Jews remained in exile under Persian rule, and consequently the salvation, which was incomplete, did not merit an obligation to say Hallel. Now then, the Rabbein l'Rava bein l'Rav Nachman Kashya. So there's a difficulty here. Isn't it taught in the Baraita that we cited earlier, after the Jewish people entered Eretz Yisrael, that land became endowed with greater sanctity, and all other lands were no longer deemed fit for songs of praise to be recited for miracles performed within them? That's why you don't say Hallel on Purim, but you could say Hallel from the Exodus from Egypt. Therefore, there should be no Hallel obligation on Purim because it was performed outside the land of Israel. And in that case, Rav Nachman's and Rav Rava's alternative explanations are incorrect. The Gemara answers that they understood differently, as it can be argued that when the people were exiled from Eretz Yisrael, the other lands returned to their initial suitability and were once again deemed fit for reciting Hallel on miracles performed within them. So, because the reasoning of Rav Nachman and Rava doesn't make sense if, given that first answer, that only Israel is appropriate after they settle the land. But the response is, the way they saw it is, once the Jews were once the Jews were exiled from their land, then everything returns to the way it was pre-settlement. And you could recite Hallel on a miracle performed in these lands outside of the land of Israel. But the reason here in this case was because they were still servants of Achashverosh. You know, it's interesting. I believe, if I remember correctly, that there were communities in Europe and Egypt, I think as well, that had their own personal, like, redemptive days. Some miracle happened in those communities, and the community would recite Hallel, even though the miracle occurred in their whatever diasporic land they were living in. So I think that this gave permission in the future to Jewish communities to recite Hallel on special days in their community. Okay, so now we're back to the whole issue of prophets. Vituleka, are there no other prophets? We only had, what do we have, 55 total. 48 men, 7 women, that was it? Because there's this drash on the opening verse in the book of Samuel. Vayehi ish echad min haramatayim sofim. So they read Achad mimatayim, one of 200. They read the verse as one of 200. He was, this Elkanah was one of 200 prophets. Sofim, the plain sense of the text is Ramatayim. Sofim is a place, but they're reading it as Matayim. Matayim is 200. Sofim. Sofeh is a seer. It could be, which can be a prophet. So why do you say there's only 48 or 55 when it says this drash says there's 200? And then Me'adonai tuvahavu. In fact, there were more prophets. And here's that Harbe Nevi'im Amdu Lahem Yisrael Kiflaim Ki Yotzei Mitzrayim. Twice as many people who left Egypt were actually prophetic. And then here the note says that it's possible to view as prophets all the Jews who left Egypt as they witnessed the revelation of God at the Red Sea. And then they experienced an even greater revelation at Mount Sinai. So they're expanding the idea of prophecy here as somebody who experiences a revelation. So therefore, yeah, there were lots of prophets.
So they're the 2 million or so who left.
Yeah.
Plus you find 2 million more somewhere.
Right, 4 million prophets are out there, which is, it's like what's the famous line by Chaim Weitzman? He's talking, I don't know if it's apocryphal, but he's talking to Harry Truman, and Harry Truman, he's asking things from Truman, and Truman says, look, it's very hard for me. I'm the president of 200 million people of different views. And Weitzman says, believe me, it's harder for me. I'm the president of 2 million presidents. So, because we all Jews like to think of themselves as in charge of things. So, yeah, so it could be, it makes sense. You got all these people insisting they're a prophet. Okay, Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar. So we have another explanation of the term of that opening verse in Shmuel. Adam haba mishtei ramot shetzofot zo et zo. He was a person who came from a place where there were 2 heights. That's what ramot are, a height, like a mountain or a hill, 2 hills that faced each other. Okay. Another explanation. Adam haba mibnei Adam she'omdim berumo shel olam. Okay, again, playing on the word Ramatayim, Rumo, height of the world, a person who descends from people who stood at the height of the world. And who was that? Who are these people? They were the Bnei Korach. As it's written, Uvenei Korach lo metu. The descendants of Korach didn't die. This was in the rebellion of Korach. So their descendants didn't die. What does that mean? there's a teaching, another Baraita that says, taught in the name of Rabbeinu, that's Rabbi Yehuda Nasiu, put the Mishnah together. So it says, Makom batser lahem begehinom ve'amdu alav. So the story is that, they all the people were standing with Korach fell to their depths into the pit, Gehinom. But the sons of Korach did tshuva, and so they didn't go down to the depths of Gehinom. They were on, in this case, a rumo, a high point in the underworld, I guess. And we know that because we have a number of psalms that are from Bnei Korach. So they couldn't have been too far. They were close enough to the land, to the bottom, to the earth. They were close enough to the earth that they were able to sing psalms and praises to God. So that's the message here. They stood at the height of their, in this case, their world, the underworld. Let's see, does he say anything? Yeah, okay, so that's what he says too. Okay, so let's go to, new section. Now we're back to the prophets. In this case, prophetesses, the prophetesses. There were 7 of them. Well, who were they? The Gemara says it was Sarah, Miriam, Devorah, Chana, Abigail, that's one of King David's many wives, and Huldah. Oh, and also Esther. So now we're going to go through how do we know they were prophets? Well, Sarah, because it was written, Avi Milkava Avi Yiska. At the beginning, when we first meet Abraham, we're introduced to Haran, one of his brothers, who is the father of Milcah and the father of Yiscah. Tradition tells us that Milcah and Yiscah were the wives of Nahor and Avraham, the other brothers of Haran. And this is a very common, we've seen this already we saw this because of Mordechai and Esther, that it's very common, the idea of an uncle marrying a niece was, I guess, a proper relation in the ancient world. So here, Iscah is in fact Sarah. And why was she called Iscah? Because she saw, let's see, where is it? Shesachta, right? Iscah, Sachta, Beruach HaKodesh. Because she saw by means of divine inspiration. And we know when she told Abraham to get rid of Hagar, that God said to Abraham, he's very upset. He didn't want to get rid of his the concubine and especially his son Yishmael. But God says, Kol asher tomar elecha Sarah, shema b'kolah. Listen to Sarah's voice. So obviously God was, this was a divine message that she understood.
Now, the verse that refers to about Milcah and Iscah, I mean, it tells you that Milcah was Nahor's wife.
Right. But it doesn't say exactly. It doesn't say that Iscah. So that's
the right.
Right.
So.
That's where the drash is coming in. Right. They're making the assumption, because remember, we've seen this so often. The rabbis don't like new characters who just show up and are just there. They like to consolidate these people. And so the fact that Yiscah is mentioned, like, why would you mention Yiscah and Milcah? We know that the text tells us that Milcah was married to Nahor. So why do we have to know who Yiscah is? It's because Yiscah happens to be Sarah. And here's the explanation of why she's called Yiscah, why she's given a second name. Well, she saw with divine inspiration. Another explanation is that it doesn't really have to do with divine inspiration. It's just that she was so beautiful. Shehakol sochin b'yofiyah. Everybody gazed at her beauty. All right, and we know that she was beautiful because that's what Abraham says to her before they go down to Egypt. You're so beautiful. Now I know you're beautiful. That was always the question. What do you mean now you know? But now I know that you're so beautiful that when the Egyptians see you, they're going to kill me and take you. So let's come up with a plan.
But all these explanations transfer properties from Sarah, attributes from Sarah to Iscah.
Right. Exactly. But it's the same person, right?
Well, but they conclude it's the same person because Sarah has all these attributes.
Right.
Nothing about where the name Iscah comes from, except the association with seeing.
Right, exactly. No, they have to come up. Well, because that's what they go backwards. I say
it's a circular argument.
Yeah, exactly. So now we get to Miriam. Okay, so Miriam we know because they said so. we read that yesterday too. Miriam Hanivi'ah Achot Aharon. Yeah, that was yesterday. Right after the song, she leads the song. How come it doesn't say that she was the sister of Moses? Right, she's sister of both. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rav. Okay, so this is because she was a prophetess. Hayamit Nab'a Kishehi Achot Aharon. Before Moses showed up, she was already showing signs of being a prophetess, because here's the story. She would say, my mother is destined to bear a son who will deliver the Jewish people to salvation. At the time when Moses was born, the entire house was filled with light, and her father stood and kissed her on the head and said to her, my daughter, your prophecy has been fulfilled. So it was recognized, she really has these prophetic abilities, except when Moses was then forced to be cast into the river because Pharaoh had decreed all the baby boys should be killed. Then her father went and said, where's your prophecy now, lady? Thanks a lot. Because it looked like he was going to die. So this is the explanation. Usually the explanation is why is she standing on the banks watching the baby in a baby brother in the basket? And she was able to run and talk to the daughter of Pharaoh that, I'll get you a nursemaid from the Hebrew wives. Usually it's explained, well, she's watching over to see what would happen to her brother. She wanted to protect him. But here we find out she wanted to know if she had prophesied correctly. And then she found out that she was right, because her brother was saved by the Pharaoh's daughter. Devorah, okay, she's the next one. Well, she is also, we know, it's a prophetess. And she's introduced Dvorah Isha Nevi'ah. She was a prophetess. Eshet Lapidot. She was the wife of Lapidot. So what does that mean? Because we never really hear about Lapidot. So does it mean is it literally she was the wife of Lapidot? Or sometimes it's a construction that she can be like a person of Lapidot. And what are Lapidot? They're wicks. So Eshet Lapidot, according to this explanation, is she made wicks for the candles, the flames in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple, because lapidot can be lapid is a flame. So she was making wicks for the flames. That is obviously the not the candles. They're the jugs of oil, the eternal light in the temple, and she would make those. Let's see what he says here. It was written that would glorify this mitzvah by making wicks the size of torches, and therefore she was called the wife of Lapidot. Another explanation is that since she was more famous than her husband, that it doesn't make sense to say who she was married to, because we don't learn anything from this guy Lapidot. Who is he? So therefore, there must be another reason for her name. Since we're talking about her, we also continue, V'hi yoshevet tachat tomer. She would sit under a palm tree. Why are we told that she sat under a palm tree? You know, what's so unique about the palm tree? And that's because Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Avshalom Mishum Yichud. She was very modest. She's a prophetess. She's modest. She's not going to sit under a tree that has branches where somebody might, or a man might come to ask her for an oracle, and they would be hidden alone. It's not appropriate. So therefore, it was a palm tree. That's why it specifies palm tree, because you've seen palm trees. They're really, really tall, and the branches go out, and there's no shade really. You can't hide under the palm tree's leaves. But we have another. But that's not the only explanation. Davar achir, that's what I was looking for. Davar achir, ma tamar ze ein lo ela lev echad. A tamar has only one heart, one center. I didn't know what palm, hearts of palm. I love hearts of palm, but I guess this is what the whole thing really looks like before they start cutting it up. Any case, they only have one main branch. And then the palm tree does not send out separate branches, but rather has only one main trunk. And so therefore the Jewish people in that generation had only one heart directed to their Father in heaven. And that was why she sat under the palm tree as symbolic of the Jewish people, which is a little bit problematic, because to read her song yesterday that we read for the Haftarah yesterday in the synagogue, in that song of victory, she criticizes some of the tribes for not coming to the aid of the Jewish people. So I'm not so sure how good that explanation is. But obviously they did fight, some of the tribes fought together to defeat the Philistines. Okay, next one, Hannah. Hannah was a prophetess, and as we know from the book of Samuel, she's the mother of Samuel. Hannah prayed and said, "My heart rejoices in the Lord, my horn is exalted in the Lord." But Rama Karni Ba. Rama Karni Velo Rama Paki. She says, my horn is exalted and not my pach, which is a flask. So this was kind of interesting that the two great kings of Israel, David and Shlomo, they were made king by having oil poured over them through a keren, a horn, a ram's horn, whereas the two kings who didn't last very long, Shaul and Yehu, are specifically mentioned in the verses about them becoming kings as being anointed from a pach, a flask. And so clearly this reference to Ramah Karni Ba is that she prophesied that if the kings were anointed from a horn, a ram's horn, or any kind of a horn, I guess an animal horn, their kingship lasted for a long time. But if they were anointed from a pach, something other than the horn, they weren't going to last too long. So that showed she had prophetic abilities. Ein kadosh kadonai ki ein biltecha. That's part of the song that she sings after when she comes to the sanctuary in Shiloh. There is none sacred as the Lord, for there is none beside you. Biltecha. Rabbi Yehuda ben Menashe said, don't read it as biltecha, rather livalotecha. To outlast, livalot. In modern Hebrew, livalot is like to spend time. So to outlast you. So there's no one who will outlast you. That as the attribute of the Holy One, blessed be He, is unlike the attribute of flesh and blood. It is an attribute of a human being that their handiwork outlasts them. right? You build a building, you create a work of art, and after you're gone, the artwork still exists and is still there and is remembered. But the Holy One, God outlasts anything that God creates. So at the end of time, when there's no more world, or the world, if at some point the world doesn't exist anymore, God will still exist. God is eternal. Okay, so we're still.
Michael, is there some echo here? I don't know the Hebrew well enough. Is there some echo here of having no other gods beside you?
Wait, what's the word there? Let's look it up real quick.
Bilpecha.
Yeah, what's the term in the Ten Commandments? Let's see. No, the term there, yeah, it's lo yihiyeh lecha Elohim achirim al panai.
Okay.
So yeah, so it doesn't have the text, but in her text it is. There's none beside you, is biltecha. Okay, another verse from her song. Ein sur ke'Eloheinu. There's no rock like our God. Ein sayar. So again, don't read sur, rock, but sayar, artist, creator. There's no artistic creator like our God. Adam sar tzura al gabei kotel. A person draws a form on an artistic rendition on a wall. Ve'eino yachol lahatil ba ruach u'neshama kravayim uvenei ma'ayim. You know, you draw a picture on a wall or a canvas, and it's two-dimensional. But Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Sar Tzura B'toch Tzura, God creates a form within a form and endows it with breath and spirit and inner innards and intestines, right, bodily parts. So this is obviously a reference to human life, that God created human beings, or actually all life, any kind of life, that God created within living beings the ability to reproduce themselves. So even within in God's creation, there's the possibility for recreation. Not possible in human beings, although at least not yet. Okay, so that was Hannah. Abigail. Who's this Abigail? Okay, so let's see. We got the story of Abigail is. Oh, no. Okay, Abigail was married to Nabal, and when David is on the run from Saul, he and his followers are hiding, and they need food, and so they go to. They're hiding out, and they ask Nabal to send them food, and Nabal says, "Get out of here! I'm not going to help you." And David's response is, "Okay, we're going to go kill him." Abigail, who supports David, and it says here, well, here we'll say, why does it say? So she comes down from the mountain with food for the men, even though her husband said no. She says, "My husband's a terrible guy, and I'm going to bring you food." And so Yoredet Beseter Ahar. So the language there is a little bit odd. Why does it say that she came by here they translate it as by the covert of the mountain? I guess it doesn't make sense. She was coming from a path so that her husband couldn't see what she was doing. But why does it say Beseter? And then they give the explanation. Abigail, in her attempt to prevent David from killing her husband Nabal, not because she loved him, she didn't love Nabal, but she doesn't want David to be guilty of killing her husband. So she came to David and questioned him on account of menstrual blood that comes from the hidden parts of her body. There's the seter, the starim. Because obviously David wasn't just a warrior, he was also a legal scholar, a halachic scholar. And so she came to ask him about this question about menstrual blood. She took a blood-stained cloth and she showed it to him, asking him to rule on her status, whether or not she was ritually impure as a menstruating woman. And he said to her, wait a minute, it's nighttime. You can't show it to me at night. I can't judge properly. It's not proper to do this at nighttime. And she said to him, aha, if so, you should also remember another halacha. Are cases of capital law tried at night? Since one does not try capital cases at night, you cannot condemn Naval to death at night. Basically, who are you to, how is David condemning him to death? And he says to her, Mored b'malchutu, he's rebelling against the throne, because at this point, David had been anointed by King of Samuel. It just wasn't public. And since Naval had refused his orders for food, that's considered rebellion. He's deserving of death. She says to him, but you lack authority to act in this manner because Saul is still alive. He's the king in actual practice, and your seal, your tiv acha, v'lo yatsa tiv acha ba'olam. She translates it here as seal, or he translates it here as your seal. I guess it comes from the word matbea. Matbea is a coin. Has not yet spread across the world. Your kingship is not known to all. Therefore, you are not authorized to try someone for rebelling against monarchy. David accepts her words. He takes this rebuke appropriately and says to her, and this is the quote from the book of Samuel, blessed be your discretion, and your blessed be you who have kept me this day from coming to blood guiltiness, from killing a person who it wasn't appropriate to kill. And so this is in the context of the Samuel, it's like, thanks for giving us the bread and the food, therefore we are not going to kill the guy. But in this case, the rabbis turn it into a legal discussion, and that he would have employed the halacha inappropriately, and would have been therefore guilty of misuse of the law. But the question is, why does it say damim? Why is damim here used in the plural? So damim tarte mashma. Usually when the damim, it means two meanings, two indications from the word dam. And so why did David not use the singular term dam? Because this teaches that Abigail revealed her thigh, and he lusted after her. And he went 3 parasangs by the fire of his desire for her and said to her, listen to me and allow me to be intimate with you. So, and she said to him, don't let this be a stumbling block for you. Don't let this be the stumbling block. That's the term, lo tihiyeh zot lecha. By referring to zot, this, it means that there was some other stumbling block that's going to happen in the future. This is how we know she's a prophetess, because she knows in the future, David is going to have another stumbling block. And who's that? Well, it's Bathsheba. And in the end, this is what it was. This is what was, as indeed he stumbled with Bathsheba. So this demonstrates that Abigail was a prophetess. She knew what would occur. It also explains why David blessed Abigail for keeping him from being responsible for 2 incidents involving blood that day: Abigail's menstrual blood and the shedding of Naval's blood. I guess revealing her thighs, she kind of turned him on, but since she was in the period of nidah, of menstruating, they couldn't have relations, and this was an obstacle for intimacy. And she was saying that's a good thing, because this shouldn't be the stumbling block. If you had relations with me, I guess not only with the married woman, but also while I'm in the period of nidah, this would have really been bad for you. So hold on to your passions. Anyway, so I just, the rabbis are not afraid to talk about stuff. Okay. Then Abigail says to David, yet the soul of my Lord shall be bound in the bond of life with the Lord your God. And when she parted from him, she said, and when the Lord shall have dealt well with my Lord, and you shall remember your handmaid. So what's this about? Rav Nachman says that it's a reference to a folk saying that people say, Itata behade shuta pilcha. Women can do two things at once. A woman is engaged in conversation. She also holds the spindle. So she can do her work with the spindle, with the, what am I saying, knitting, not knitting, quilting, or, wait, what do you do with a spindle? You do, it's not quilting.
You make thread.
Yeah, you throw, right.
Yarn.
Yeah, so she can do that, and she can also have a conversation. Two things at the same time. What are the two things? Well, she's letting David know that when she's a free woman, because Naval dies of a heart, in the text, he dies of a heart attack when he finds out that she's given all this stuff away, because he was such a miser, he couldn't believe it. That when I'm free, when I'm a free woman, I'm a single woman again, just remember me, come back, and we can get married then. So that's are the two things that she was thinking of. On the one hand, she wants him to save himself from doing something wrong, but also don't forget about me when the time comes. And there's another folk saying that the shafel ve'azel bar avza ve'enohi mitafei, that the goose stoops its head as it goes along, but its eyes look from afar to find out what it is looking for. So she's also, while she's got her head down, don't abuse me now, don't kill my husband, but just remember when I'm free, when I'm available, remember where my address. And I think it explains here it was, the background. The eyes of geese are located far to the sides of their heads. So when they stoop down to the ground looking for food, they're still aware of their surroundings. Okay, so two folk sayings about Abigail. She's a very, very smart woman, very, very clever. All right, well, now we're up to Huldah. Huldah was a prophetess, as it is written. So Hilkiah the priest and Achikam and Achbor and Shaphan and Asaiah, they went to Huldah the prophetess to get some information. They were emissaries of King Josiah, who was one of the few good kings after David and Solomon. But the question is here, Jeremiah lived at the time of Josiah. So why was she prophesying at the same time as Jeremiah? Shouldn't she have been a little modest? And it says, well, she was a relative of Jeremiah. And so he was okay with her prophesying at the same time that he was prophesying. But then why did Yoshia go to her and not to Jeremiah? So the sages of the school of Rabbi Shelah said, because women are more compassionate. It's interesting that you could read it Rabbi Shelah as if the rabbi was a woman. We know that it's Shelah is not a woman, it's a rabbi, but it just kind of looked interesting. Rabbi Shelah said, because women are more compassionate. And so he was hoping that she would give him a better report than Jeremiah would. Jeremiah might be tough on him. Rabbi Yochanan has a different answer, because Jeremiah was not there at the time, because he had gone back to bring the 10 tribes in from exile. This was after the destruction of the northern kingdom. How do we know that? We have a verse from Ezekiel. Ezekiel prophesied that in the future, the Jubilee year would no longer be in effect. How is it possible that Jubilee year had been annulled already? Because the halachot of the Jubilee year apply only when all of the tribes of Israel are settled in their respective places, and which could not have happened since the exile of the 10 tribes more than a century earlier. but the prophet is prophesying that it will cease only in the future. So therefore, it teaches that Jeremiah brought back the 10 tribes from exile, so that in the future, the Jubilee year will be annulled when, of course, they're exiled again from Babylonia. But right now, that hadn't happened yet. So Jeremiah brought the people together.
Huldah is, or more properly, the ghost of Huldah, is a character in this novel, Kabbalah of Stone.
Oh.
By Irene Reddy, that takes place in Girona, I think in the 15th century.
Oh,
so someone sort of discovers that he's really Jewish and starts learning about things. I don't remember.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's a slightly strange novel, but by the time I finished reading it, we'd just been to Girona. So.
Oh. So, okay. So, all right. So then we go through here again. That Josiah did rule over the 10 tribes. So in fact, that must have happened, that the tribes must have come down and been all together, Judah, because he proclaimed these things that you've done against the altar of Beth-El. Now, what connection did Josiah, the king of Judah, have with an altar of Beth-El, which is the king of Israel? It must be that he ruled over these 10 tribes too. Okay, now we get to Esther. Esther was also a prophetess, and we've had this explanation already earlier, that it was from the verse where it says, "Vayihi b'yom hashlishi," she goes to see Achashverosh after Mordechai has explained to her the situation. V'tilbash Esther malchut. It doesn't say that she clothed herself in bigdei malchut, but rather malchut. So what does this mean? Because she dressed herself in Holy Spirit. And then they have a verse from Chronicles where that's the same term, Ruach Lavsha, that the spirit of the divine clothed Amasai. So we have this terminology of being clothed in the divine spirit. And then we get this other message. It's like we can't have anything positive about women without saying something a little negative. So Amar Rav Nachman, lo ya'ayihiruta linashe. It's not appropriate for women to be haughty. We got a couple of examples of haughtiness here, of these prophetesses. And the proof of this is names, because they were named after unpleasant creatures. Dvorah was called Ziborta, and Huldah was called Karkushta. These are Aramaic translations of their name. Dvorah is a bee or a hornet here. Huldah is a marten. Yeah, it's like either a weasel also. They're the same kind of animals. And why were they given these haughty names, or why were they given these negative names? Because Dvorah, it's written, she sent and called for Barak. She did not go to him. See, she shouldn't have done that. It was not appropriate. She should have had Barak she should have gone to Barak, because she's a woman, I guess. And Huldah, it says, say to the man that sent you to me, right? When these guys come to talk to her, get a prophecy from her, she says, say to the man that sent you to me. Well, that was King Josiah. She didn't refer to him as Josiah, as the king, as Melech Yoshia. Now we also learn about Huldah's background. Huldah mibnei vanav shel Yehoshua haita. She was a descendant of Joshua. And that's because it's written in 2 Kings, Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shalom, the son of Tikva, the son of Harchas. And elsewhere, it says in Judges about Joshua, they buried him in the border of his inheritance, Timnat Cheres. So you see here the connection, it's a little distant, but the term Harchas and Cheres, similar words, we draw the connection. The Torah or the Bible is telling us that she was related to Joshua. Rav Aina, the elder, raised an objection from a Baraita to Rav Nachman's teaching. And the Baraita indicates that Huldah was in fact a descendant of Rachav, not of Joshua, because we have this Baraita that says 8 prophets who were also priests, were descended from Rachav the prostitute. And then we're named Neriah, the son of Baruch, Sariah, Machsaiah, Yirmiah, Chilkiah, Chanamel, and Shalom. And so too, Rabbi Yehuda says, so too Huldah the prophetess was a descendant of Rachav the prostitute. Because she says, because here she's the son, somehow she's related to the son of Tikva. She was the wife of Shalom, who was the son of Tikva. And it's written elsewhere about Rachav, the word Tikva shows up, the chord of Tikvat Chut Hashani. So you've got Tikva, Tikva, those 2 words. What do we learn from this? Oh, they must be related in some way. All right, so Rav Nachman argues with him. Aina Saba, and some people say he called them Patya Ukama. It's not clear whether this is an insult or what, but here Steinsaltz seems to believe it's a compliment. My colleague who's toiled and blackened his face in Torah. From me and from you, the matter may be concluded. Because what happened was Rachav converted and married Joshua. And so therefore, Huldah descended from both Joshua and Rachav. But then wait a minute. In the book of Chronicles, as they go through these lists of genealogies, it says Nun was the son of, in this list of Ephraim genealogies, Nun was the son and Joshua was his son, and that's the end of the genealogy, which suggests that he didn't have any sons. So how could he have had, how did he have, he didn't have any descendants, rather, I should say. That was the end, he was the end of the line. But, he didn't have sons, but he did have daughters. Okay, maybe we'll end right here. So we'll go into that next week. So unfortunately, because they were daughters, they didn't mention him in the book of Chronicles, but he did have daughters that led to the creation of Huldah, the prophet. Okay, that's where we'll finish.
A question on a slightly different direction. Is Rachav a pun in Hebrew?
Oh, yeah.
It is in English.
Yes.
Broad.
Wait, what is it?
Rahav.
Is wide. Yeah. So
Yes. Is that a pun in Hebrew?
Yes.
I mean, it could be. I'm trying to think what. You mean broad in the sense of a woman? You mean like that I don't know. Well, I mean, Rachav, it does mean broad. It means wide.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if it means, if it's a pun in terms of a woman. I have to. Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
But anyway, well, we'll read about. I think we've already actually learned about Rachav earlier in Megillah. I don't think it was in Tamid in our previous studies, but I think in Megillah itself we learned that I mean, it wasn't in Tanit, that she was so beautiful that she turned guys on just with her name, but we'll get to that next week. All right, very good. Everybody have a good day. Take care.
You and thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day.